Last year, when I was still at my old community college, during spring break, I went on a trip to Paris and Bayeux, which is in the Normandy area of France. And this was on a study abroad trip to learn more about World War II. And so clearly there is a big cultural barrier between me and the French people. And I've been warned multiple times that people in France are a little less forgiving to the way that Americans react, the fact that they're louder, the fact that the way that they dress isn't exactly as formal as French people. And also, when American people try to speak French, it can actually be insulting in some cases to some of the French people just because they're not speaking it correctly. And so there are two kinds of French people that came in contact: the outside French people, which is the people in small villages around the France, around the nation of France, and then there's the Parisians. The Parisians are from Paris. And so my first stop during the trip was actually to Paris. And I noticed something. The Parisians, they're the ones who are a lot more strict in the rules of maintaining the French culture. They hold the culture in a lot more stricter standards for people who are outside. When I went to Bayeux in the Normandy area, which was further north from Paris, the people were a lot nicer, a lot more friendlier, and a lot more forgiving for me and my issues with speaking French. But I did want to speak French just so I had some knowledge of being the language that I was going to be surrounded by when I was in France. And so I did a little bit of research, not enough, but I did do a little bit of research before going to Paris, going to Bayeux, going to France on the study abroad trip. And it kind of ended up in an interesting way for me. I was on a excursion, or a little bit of a study class period time, and we had some free time where we were by Notre Dame, and this was actually a few days before Notre Dame had burned down. And when I was there were these young women who were part of a petition, and all around Notre Dame you could see people who were trying to get people to sign their petitions, just as a way so that they could promote their causes. And so instantly they were able to recognize that me and my friends were American, and they came up to us. It was most likely because of the clothes that we were wearing, or the fact that we were, talking a little louder. And so when they came up to us, they asked if we'd like to sign a petition, to which I responded saying, no thank you, or the way that I said it in France, non merci. I said non merci, non merci, and I couldn't really say anything beyond that. Still tried to be nice and kind of formal, but apparently I was saying it wrong because then they started chasing me around. Not for too long, just for a couple seconds. They started mocking me, saying, "Oh, non merci, non merci," and I felt really awkward. But yeah, that was an experience I had in France. But that was kind of a funny experience for me looking back on it, but in the moment I did really enjoy it that much. It wasn't really fun to be pointed out for something that I was and made fun of it. And I do actually know an experience that one of my friends had that was part of that. My friend is actually lesbian, and this was back in high school, and she really wanted to go to Chick-fil-A. Um, she didn't want to go to Chick-fil-A, but she went with her friends to Chick-fil-A. She already knew about the certain standards that Chick-fil-A has, or the certain statements, what they stand for, and she didn't really agree with them. There's clashing ideas there, especially since Chick-fil-A is a Christian foundation, and there are Christian foundations that have these kind of attitudes towards people who are open with their sexuality. And when she went, she was kind of noticed for her different sexuality. I think it was made apparent to them through talking to her and through seeing her, the clothes that she wore, the way her hair was cut, and just the way that she was kind of closer to one of her friends who she did kind of have a relationship with, who was also a woman. And I think that even though she didn't really show in any way, they automatically assumed that she was a woman, and I'm sorry, she was a lesbian. She was a woman who was a lesbian, and even though the assumption was true, they were still making that jump. And I do recall that she had said that she was treated in certain ways that were unfair, and they didn't really have a good attitude towards her. And I really don't believe there could have been other reasons. There could have been other factors that played into it, but I do know from my experience with my friend that she is very kind and very sweet, and she is, not looking for any conflict at all. So the fact that there was this kind of conflict does kind of make you think that maybe it is possible that this was because of the Christian background of the workers, or at least the foundation, and the way that they responded to the fact that she was someone who, in their eyes, could be considered wrong and has been multiple times. This is, of course, just an assumption on my part as well, because I do not fully know, but really a way that could be checked for this is for her to kind of ask not only the workers maybe, but also maybe her friends to see if they noticed anything as well. Just to get some more feedback, just to make sure that the facts are gained, what they noticed, and then what they could assume that means. Even though the assumption is wrong, coming from multiple people, you kind of get a gist of what everybody is picking up as well. Still, that is assumption. So if you want to go based on facts, the facts just were that she went to this restaurant. She identifies with a culture that some of the people of the culture that are affiliated with Chick-fil-A do not appreciate, do not fully understand, and sometimes don't accept. Even though Chick-fil-A itself doesn't do this, I do know that there are Christians in the Christian culture that don't agree with open sexuality. And so just from those facts, it is obvious that she was treated in some way that wasn't fair, and that wasn't good for her, and she did not enjoy that experience. I really didn't feel comfortable about this. I didn't really like going to Chick-fil-A after that. It opened my eyes, educated me to the fact that this is something that is real, even though I've heard discussions of their views on open sexuality. It still kind of bothered me to know that someone who I actually knew was basically discriminated against, and I really didn't appreciate that. And even though I still go to Chick-fil-A, I still have kind of a different perspective on it. And honestly, I think getting over this, most important part for me individually, is knowing that there are some organizations that do react this way, and going behind any kind of promotion of ideas, so that they can understand, being able to call out these organizations for these reasons, even if it's not the reason that I assume, just recognizing that, hey, you did this to my friend, you didn't make my friend feel good, and that is a problem. And of course, going in deeper, maybe even asking why this was. Just being aware of the fact that there are cultures that don't agree with each other, and that does come to a clash sometimes. And understanding why it is very important.